Hare Krishna. Welcome. Nice to see you all. Hopefully, everybody is adjusted to this daylight saving time. Thankfully, this time will not change again now because British Columbia here they have passed a law saying no more daylight savings for us. So at least our clocks are not going to again change in future, which is a good thing. So we can get used to this time. Okay, so let's continue our journey of Karma Yoga. In today's session, we're going to cover slokas 3.25 to 3.28. So let me play them for you.
सक्ताः कर्मण्य विद्वांसो यथा कुर्वन्ति भारत कुर्याद् विद्वांस्तथा सक्तश्चिकीर्षुर्लोकसङ्ग्रहम् न बुद्धिभेदं जनयेदज्ञानां कर्मसङ्गिनाम् जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि विद्वान् युक्तः समाचरन् प्रकृतेः क्रियमाणानि गुणैः कर्माणि सर्वशः अहंकार विमुdatma कर्ताहमिति मन्यते tattva-vittu महाबाहो गुणकर्म विभागयोः गुणा गुणेषु वर्तन्त इति मत्वा न सज्जते.
Okay, Hare Krishna. So does anybody remember where we left the previous session? Anything comes to mind? Any key words or key topics, key learnings? Okay, Manojji, I think you probably heard the recording.
Lok Sangra and leading by example as a teacher.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was one of the key aspects which Krishna taught us about Loka Sangraha. Maybe I will ask you one quick question. I know everybody is having a lot of duties, lot of roles to play. Have you done any significant action in the past, say, few weeks, few days, few weeks? Anybody? Have you done any significant action? If you have done some action, you can say yes. Otherwise, I'm going to ask you, how did you avoid action? Okay. Yes, Deepaji, you did some action, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I hosted people for dinner and I ensured that each item is homemade. Like, whatever. It takes a little efforts, preparation and all. So, in that way, every smallest thing was like homemade,
Awesome.
nothing brought from outside.
Very nice.
Despite confessing, I'm not the one who likes cooking. At this time, I changed my approach and yeah.
Excellent. So I think now you are becoming a wonderful cook. So, but why did you do that?
Sheer love. That's it.
Okay. But you did it.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you are on the path, definitely advancing on the path of Karma Yoga. So whenever you are doing an action, there are two fundamental quick questions you should ask yourself. First, why am I doing it? And second, who is doing it? The funny part is, who is doing it seems like a very silly question. People are like, I just told you I did it, and you're again asking me who did it. So that answer will become clearer in a while, okay? So Krishna already established that the wise person acts without any attachment, and they offer. What they do, their action is always an offering. It is yagya, and as Manoj rightly said, that is contributing to Loka Sangraha. People always say, the world is in such a bad state. And then I ask them, what do you wish? They say, we wish the world was a better place. And then Krishna's teaching is, can you make yourself a better person? And then can you try to make your near and dear ones a little better? I mean, help them make themselves better. net hasn't the world become better? So that is a very powerful message here. And the problem is, it is all possible. The fundamental part is loka sangraha. When all our actions become an offering, then it is easier for us to always focus on making an impact, a positive impact, and that becomes a chain reaction. Like you do that, and then you inspire your near and dear ones to do the same thing, and eventually the world becomes a better place. But when we don't have this knowledge of Krishna's teachings, then what happens is, any action, it always triggers a ego response. Whenever you do anything, it's always, how am I going to benefit from it? Am I going to get name? Am I going to get fame? Am I going to be appreciated? Am I going to be criticized? Isn't it? There are so many such ego-based questions that come in our mind, and we need to learn to replace that with the questions we discussed in the previous session. On, is it the right thing to do? How is it going to benefit the larger good? So on and so forth. The problem is, when we talk about spiritual evolution and all of that, a lot of us, we have some misunderstandings where we imagine that somebody who is spiritually evolving will lose interest in their work, in their duty, in their family. Is that how you feel? Any of you feel like that? Good. We are all like sincerely following Krishna's teachings. But that is a common understanding. In fact, most common criticism you will see, especially youngsters, when somebody says or somebody is trying to evolve spiritually, the most common funny criticism is, "Kya sannyas lena hai kya? No, Baba banna hai kya?" So the assumption, the misunderstanding is, we think spiritual evolution means you avoid everything that is material. You avoid the material duties. You avoid your, material relationships. But that's definitely not what Krishna is saying. So Krishna says the wise person is not the one who is escaping any of that. But the wise person is the one who knows how to build the right relationship with the world. Who knows how to build the right relationship with their own actions, with their own mind, with their own thoughts. That's the profound teaching. So outwardly, I'm talking about karma. When it comes to karma yoga, externally, the wise and the unwise, they will both look very similar. Because they may both be doing the same actions. Like, let us say a simple example, maybe teaching. So, two people may be doing the job of a teacher. Two people are performing the act of teaching. So when you look, you will only say two teachers. So outwardly, they both look same. They both look similar in what they do. But internally, the whole game changes between the wise and the unwise. Because the unwise, they are acting out of fear, out of attachment, out of scarcity mindset, whereas the wise, they are acting out of clarity, steadiness, freedom, so on and so forth. So two people performing the same action, looking the same externally, but internally one is doing that action based on a scarcity mindset and fear and all of that, whereas one is doing the same action based on fullness and compassion. And so the difference is there. And how does that impact them? The unwise, because of their internal mindset, they keep getting bound by their actions. Their actions keep creating more and more bondage for them. Whereas the wise, the same action is helping them get liberation. It's a very powerful teaching. Please pay attention, because Krishna does not say, here are the list of holy actions that you should take in order to get liberation. Krishna says action itself is neither good nor bad. What is important is your inner mindset. And the example we are giving is two people teaching. And we think teaching means it is sattvic. So if we didn't have the complete understanding of the mechanism of karma yoga, we will say that just by the act of teaching, both the teachers are going towards liberation. No, that's not how it works. One person may be teaching and still getting more and more into bondage. One person may be teaching and getting liberated. And the powerful lesson, that is why Bhagavad Gita is in the battlefield, where Krishna says, Externally, it may look like Arjuna is just a violent guy. It may look like what? He's just picking up bow and arrows and shooting people. But internally, his mindset is perfected. So he is going to get liberation through this act also. What is the practical takeaway for us? If we want to evolve through karma, if we want to evolve through actions, stop worrying about what should be the best actions. Instead, start thinking about how should I be doing any action that I'm already doing. Those two questions. The two questions, why you are doing something and who is doing it. And the honest answer to that honest introspection will put you on the path to becoming a successful karma yogi. That is what makes this teaching so extraordinary. And that one difference of internally what your mindset is, changes the entire experience of life for you. See how profound this is. See, this is where Krishna's teaching is so compassionate and his teaching is also so relevant. Because he's not saying the truth of how to succeed in karma yoga. It is somewhere very distant. It is somewhere that is reserved for some very special people. Krishna is saying that truth is very close to you. That truth is available to all of you. And that truth can be realized and put to work by anybody, no matter what you do and what your position in life is. And here is where we tie karma to loka sangraha. Because the more we are able to act with that mindset, our actions naturally become more free. And when that action becomes more free, it does not remain private. It is not. Why? What is the meaning of private? Anybody knows what is the meaning of private? Very simple word. Yes, you can try.
You want to hide it. You don't want to tell everybody about it.
You don't want to tell everybody about it. Okay, that is private.
Secretive.
Secretive. Okay. Yes, Purvaji, you wanted to say something?
Basically, something very personal that you don't want to share with the world. You want to keep it to yourself.
Thank you. I think she used the perfect word here. When we say private, it is something you don't want to share. That is why they'll put this big signboard, private property. Prosecutors shall be, no, what is it? Trespassers shall be prosecuted. I was going to say prosecutors shall be trespassed. So that is private. Private means you don't want to share. When your actions are performed with a mindset not attached to outcomes, then it is no longer private. Because you are not afraid to share the results, because you are not attached to the results, you are offering the results. Offering means what? Sharing. So your mindset automatically is no longer in this privateness. So your actions are not meant for just you. You're open to sharing. And when everybody starts acting that way, that is when it becomes loka sangraha. Because everybody is only thinking about the bigger good, larger good, you see. So that is why this teaching is just so powerful. Like Deepaji right in the beginning said, she was cooking, but then she was cooking only out of love. And that is loka sangraha, right there. She didn't have to do something exotic to demonstrate loka sangraha. Because unconsciously, they have stopped spreading the tension of ego. What happens is, when you are not working in this kind of a mindset, what happens is your ego is always in control. And what about others? Even you don't enjoy what you do. Because your focus is not on just the act. Your focus is always, the ego really takes control. The ego always asks, am I getting appreciated? Am I going to get this? Am I going to get that? Am I going to feel good? That way the joy of actual action is gone. You see where we are going with all of this is, we are talking about just a mindset, and we are saying how that one mindset change can impact the experience of life for you, and also how it can impact positively everybody around you. That's very empowering. That is the key. So the key is, bondage is not created just because you do some action. Bondage is created because you do an action which is controlled by your ego. You do an action based on ownership, craving, fear. So the action itself is never the problem. The problem is always when the ego takes control. My success, my failure, my image, my wound, my importance. You see, whenever there is my, it is private. Because you are not in the mindset of sharing there. You see, you are always putting that signboard, private property. But just see, let us assume that you are a young person and you are living in your parents' house. Okay, and inside your parents' house, they have given you a nice room. And outside that room, you put a board saying private property. See, a lot of people are laughing because it doesn't make sense. It sounds silly. But some kids do that. Outside their room, they'll put this board, do not enter, private property. And we are like, what, man? The house itself belongs to your parent. But that is the truth of this earth. That is the truth of this cosmos. That is the truth of where we are. Is how can anything be private when you yourself belong to somebody? You yourself belong to Prakriti. This body itself is a loan given to you. So you see how that mindset of private is totally out of alignment with the truth. And once we fully understand this, then the question will automatically change. So maybe I will send it in my notes also, but what needs to happen is, whenever you are performing any significant action, let us say, you should ask a few questions. Ask yourself, what is the motivation? What is making me do this act? What is making me do this action? You have to ask this question to yourself. Of course, you have to then ask many other questions. Is it fear? Is it vanity? Is it guilt? Sometimes we act out of guilt. Oh, poor thing, I said like this yesterday, so today I have to say something nice. So sometimes is it guilt? Is it resentment that makes you do what you are doing? Is it insecurity? So on and so forth. And then also ask the right questions, good questions. Is it love? Is it just duty? Is it offering? And the more you can answer yes to the last questions, the good questions, the more you are getting aligned. Because that is where Karma Yoga begins. When somebody says Karma Yoga, this is the beginning of Karma Yoga. Real beginning. That is where theory starts transitioning into practice. Yes, Soumyaji?
Guruji, Hare Krishna. So I'm just looking for some ways or some tips on how to implement exactly this thing in corporate life. Right? My occupational hazard is that everybody would come to me and I will have to behave like a grandmom, well, like in human resources, right? So I cannot obviously talk to them in terms of nishakama karma, loka sangraha, all of this stuff. They'll think I'm going crazy. But any tips on how can I even lead the team towards thinking about this, apart from saying just trust the process?
Yeah, that's a great question. However, your question itself was having a little bit of, I'm not criticizing you. It is just an introspection in a trusted group. Your question itself had like a scarcity mindset built right there, because you are saying I cannot be a grandmom to everybody. So right when you are thinking about a problem, the scarcity mindset has already come into play. So I'm not a HR, so I understand HR should have their own nuanced restrictions, but I certainly have been a leader for many years, and I've had many people reporting to me and all of that. So whenever I spot a engineer or a direct report, maybe a PM or engineer, whoever, whenever I see them, of course, I do have coaching sessions with a lot of them, and whenever I sense that they are in a mindset of fear, because this is very common in corporate sector. They're always afraid of what their rating is going to be. They're always afraid of, am I getting enough visibility, and so on and so forth. So that is where I do tell them. I don't tell them. I don't use the words nishkama karma. There are other modern words for that, which says, if you focus on excellence, the results will come, the rewards will come. You have to trust the process. So all I tell them is the standard practical scientific term that we discussed earlier is, listen, you have a limited amount of energy. Now, do you want to spend all that energy in doing a great job, or do you want to spend half that energy worrying about what is going to happen? Because if you put half energy into worrying about what's going to happen, then you are only putting half energy in your work, and it will never be as good as it could have been. And of course, the other thing I don't just give lectures. I also try to create an objective framework for people where people understand what are the metrics. And so as much as you can provide clarity and you can be objective and say that just focus on the metrics. The metrics means, for example, it can be, I can talk in software terms, like if you're running a service, then you should have 95% availability. Have you met that goal? If you met that goal, then don't worry. If people are going to appreciate that or people are going to criticize that, you have done what you had to do. So create an objective framework for your people and also help them understand very practically. It is not even a spiritual thing. It's a very practical thing. Tell them that you all have limited energy, and do you want to spend most of the energy in worrying, or do you want to spend all the energy in just doing the right thing? And this is precisely what Krishna is telling Arjuna. He's telling Arjuna, like, you are talking about punya, pap and all of that. I'm telling you, Arjuna, this is your duty right here. Focus on that. That is pretty much what karmanyavadikaraste means. It means you're not focused on the outcomes, which doesn't mean that you are taking your job lightly. All it means is you are focusing on what you are supposed to do, and for that, definitely here is the objective set of metrics. So that usually helps people get them clarity. So Krishna is saying that then comes the next part. The next part, this also Manojji said, we discussed earlier, where he said we should lead by example, correct? And that is also a very strong message given by Krishna here. And so Krishna says that try not to create, so Somyaji, this will also lead to what we just discussed. Because not everybody is in the same level of maturity. So we cannot use the same terms like nishkama karma and all of that, or loka sangraha to people. It's not going to really work for everybody. So first thing, just be objective and try to make sure they are not in a mindset of fear, which we all can help with. And second, Krishna is saying he's using a term, buddhi veda, that is basically fractured understanding. So Krishna is saying that there are people who are still not reached a certain level of maturity, because of which they are still attached to outcomes. They are very attached to outcomes. Don't try to create confusion in their minds. So don't try to preach the same teachings to everybody. So in Vedanta, that is why we always say unsolicited advice is prohibited. That is why in Vedanta, later on, like Krishna will himself say, you have to reach a guru, you have to approach a guru. You have to approach a guru with humility. Pariprashnena, pranipatena, sevaya. That is how we are supposed to approach, because you have to be ready and you have to seek. And then the knowledge will make sense. And then you will be able to internalize that. Of course, that makes sense even today, correct? I mean, would you teach nuclear science to just anybody? Don't you at least make sure that they have an intellectual capacity to understand the implications of what they are learning? So that is the same message here. And this is actually a very compassionate teaching, because what happens when even we are approaching spirituality, even when we understand a little bit, we have the temptation to speak, temptation to show others what I know. And unknowingly we may also be tempted to preach. And that usually does not work. What Krishna says is, this is a strong lesson for all of us. You may feel like you are providing spiritual clarity to people, but you have to introspect, are you yourself free from ahankara? Otherwise, how can you differentiate whether it is your ahankara, trying to give you self-importance versus real clarity that is coming from a place of calmness, fullness and clarity? Because if your ahankara is active, then you yourself are confused. Then how do you expect to provide clarity to others? So Krishna is asking us to introspect, and Krishna is not encouraging that. Because a truth or a knowledge which is given before somebody is ready, like even a children, when a child is born, for a certain period of time, they don't even introduce the child to solid food. And then for a certain period of time, there are a limited, they say only these things should be given. Isn't it? A newborn baby, will you just feed the baby biryani? Does it make you very like noble and you are like, I'm such a good-hearted person, nobody is giving that poor child biryani, let me go feed it biryani. You see how absurd this sounds? That is how it is with even powerful spiritual teachings, is make sure the person is ready. Because what happens otherwise, they will misunderstand, they will misinterpret, and that becomes a bigger problem. And more than that, many times they will resist. If you try to introduce something before a person is ready, they will resist and they will close. And then it will become very hard to reintroduce that teaching to them. So there are so many dimensions, so many aspects coming here. So, for example, you tell a person that it is not you who are the doer. So don't be in a mindset of doership. But if they're not ready, if they're not mature enough, they will get into this conclusion. That means there is no point in doing anything. See, even among us, think about it. Maybe I'll see if I can find some old session recordings. You will be surprised how the level of questions changed. The kind of questions somebody asked right before we began the Bhagavad Gita teachings, and the kind of questions they were asking by the time we reach chapter 10, there will be a marked difference. Because the level of maturity has automatically gone up. They are become more ready now. They become more open. That is Krishna's message here. So Krishna is saying that don't try to dictate a new way of life to people, especially those who are not yet ready. Instead, focus on leading by example. And what is the leading by example? Why we are talking about that here? Because just a few minutes ago we said, when you act, can you introspect? When you act, can you ask yourself, why am I doing this? And can you make sure that your actions all come from a position of fullness? Can you make sure that none of your actions are coming from a position of scarcity mindset? If you do that, automatically a lot of people will follow your example. So all Krishna is saying is karma yoga, instead of trying to preach and teach, karma yoga, try to do, practice and lead by example. A beautiful example, this is a real life example. A lot of you may already know this. How many of you know Beatles? Okay, a lot of people know Beatles. And George Harrison, he was the poster child of Beatles, right? And so they were one of the most popular bands on the planet. They had millions of followers. And then once George Harrison met Srila Prabhupada, and he was kind of, for whatever reason, it's all Krishna's Leela that George Harrison got interested in Krishna consciousness. And then he asked Prabhupada, he said, Guruji, should I shave my head like you? No. Should I also dress like you? Should I also shave my head like you? And what should I do, Prabhuji? Like, I would like to serve too. And so Srila Prabhupada, so why I'm taking this example is that Srila Prabhupada, what he did is very much aligned with this particular teaching of Krishna that we just spoke about. So Prabhupada said, you don't have to do all of that, my friend. Why don't you just use your musical talent to attract the followers to Krishna consciousness? He says, because you are a very famous person, there are millions of people who are following you, and whatever you do, your fans will follow. So why don't you lead by example? Why don't you just, do your actions, whatever you are doing, continue doing the same actions. You don't have to become a different person, but do those actions in Krishna consciousness, and automatically people are going to get attracted. And they say that's what happened. They say that George Harrison ended up attracting a lot of people towards Krishna consciousness. Purvaji, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, the ISKCON temple in the UK, the land is owned by George Harrison and it's built on that land. And he was the one who put together the bhajan, Govindam, Adi Purusham. Like he sung it very beautifully for the 7 a.m. Aarti that happens at ISKCON called the Darshan Aarti. And I'm very passionate about that one. So yeah, just wanted to share that.
No, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. It's always good to know these things. And there are other great personalities too, like Ford. Ford is another example. Henry Ford. And the Mayapur, the biggest temple that's being built, a huge part of the contribution is coming from Ford. So there are many such personalities. My point is, isn't this the most effective way? That a lot of people already look up to George Harrison. A lot of people already look up to Ford, let us say. And they just see that my idol is following Krishna consciousness. Is that not the easiest way to get thousands of people also believing in Krishna? Is the message. So just like that, there are people who are looking up to you also. It may not be a million people, but there are people. Everybody comes here, everybody has a role to play, and everybody has people who impact us, people who are impacted by us. We are all part of that ecosystem. We already studied that in the previous few lokas. So all Krishna is saying is, live your life in such a way that you are also leading by example. Even if 3 people, even if 4 people follow your example, you have done a great service. Loka Sangraha, that is in the Loka Sangraha in the true sense. And about these people who are not yet mature, Krishna is describing them in Sloka 3.27. He actually uses a slightly strong word there. He says, Prakruteha kriyamanani guneha karmani sarvashah. And then he says, ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. So, ahankar, we all understand. Vimudatma. Muda means foolish or deluded. But Krishna uses a stronger word. He says vimuda. Vimuda means utterly deluded. You see, even in Bhaja Govindam, Shankaracharya used the word, right? Bhaja Govindam, 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 Bhaja Mudamathe. And here Krishna is saying, ahankara vimudatma. What Krishna is saying? That actions in all respects are driven by the modes of nature, gunas. But the person who is utterly deluded by ego, thinks that I am the doer. So now, Deepaji, we go back to the second question I asked you. I asked you, why did you cook? And you said, out of love. And I asked you, who did it? And you said, I did it. This is the more difficult question for all of us. Because this is so hard. It is so counterintuitive. Because you make a charitable donation, somebody asks you who did the charitable donation. Of course I did it. So the problem is not the word I, the problem is your mindset. In your mindset, are you of this mindset that it's all me? This food turned out good because of my culinary skills. Isn't it? That is the whole question. It is not us. Krishna says the gunas. We are all part of such a big ecosystem that we have to recognize. That is why we say that 2% can be doing the same act, but still be having an entirely different experience of life, entirely different mindsets. Prakrite kriyamanani gunaiha. All the karmas, all the actions, they're all carried out by the gunas of Prakriti. What are those gunas? Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, we all know that. They shape the whole cosmos. The profound message here is they don't just shape the external cosmos, they also shape us internally. The same gunas which are acting on the universe externally, the same gunas are acting internally also. But what does a human being do? They take credit for everything. That is why Sri Krishna says, ahankara, vimudatma. I sowed the seed. That is why today you see the tree. That tree is my tree. Because I sowed. Did you actually create the seed? Do you even know, like, how can you make a new seed yourself? Did you create the soil? Did you create the water? Did you create sunlight? Did you create the air? But now you are like, it is my tree because I sowed the seed. So that is the problem. The problem is the mindset. Krishna says, if you don't understand this, that is what he means by don't be in the mindset of doership. Do what needs to be done, but also have the humility to acknowledge that you are a small part of a huge ecosystem. And there are so many things that are working. There are so many forces and these gunas. That is why one person runs a bookshop and he becomes Jeff Bezos. Another person also runs a bookshop and he remains a small bookshop owner all his life. You see? So there is so much more happening and we need to be aware of that. It's the whole message here. Because Prakriti functions everywhere, not just, we just look at the sun, we just look at the moon and we say, yes, look at nature, so beautiful. Are you holding the sun where it is supposed to be? Are you holding the moon? Is somebody doing that? No, that is nature, that is Prakriti. Based on Prakriti, the moon is where it is supposed to be, the sun is where it is supposed to be. But do you think what is inside you is all you? No, that is also the same Prakriti. That same Prakriti is making sure that you are who you are, what you are, and that recognition is very, very important. And that is what Vedanta is asking. Vedanta tells us to understand Prakriti better. Because in modern sense, in the modern knowledge, whenever people say nature, what comes to mind immediately is things around us. Nature means the tree, the plant, the ocean, the sky, isn't it? But Vedanta says, when they say nature, you have to start understanding that is you also. What is inside you also. That is the same nature. And later on we are going to study the concept of para-prakriti and apara-prakriti, where that is Vedanta, it goes much more deeper into this aspect of Prakriti. So it is important to recognize how powerful this Prakriti is. So it is good. Let us be honest about it. Why we are talking about this now and not at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita is because before we have any knowledge, if somebody came and said, don't say I am the doer, you are not the doer, it is the gunas, then what would be the natural conclusion? What is the point then? Why should, if everything gunas are only doing, like today, tomorrow you will go and hit somebody and say it's not me, it was the gunas. So you see the folly. Now you understand why Krishna said people who are not mature don't try to get into a preaching mode. Because if you are absolutely immature and somebody comes and tells you you are not the doer, it is the gunas, you are going to draw wrong conclusions. And it's going to be dangerous for you, it's going to be dangerous for the society. But hopefully now, with the understanding you have, I hope nobody here has this same mindset. I hope nobody here is asking that question. If the gunas are doing everything, that means I'm not accountable for anything. Is anybody really thinking like that? I hope not. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. So once you learn to see that the ego creates all these false images and you are supposed to clean that part, then your real journey will begin. So you ask the questions, your karma yoga starts, and then you introspect and you become mindful, you become aware that you are not the doer because you are a small part of a huge ecosystem. So you are just doing what you are supposed to do. That is why Krishna says the results are not in your hand. How can you totally internalize that? Only if you keep your ego on the side. Because if you are not able to manage your ego, then that is impossible. Anytime, that is why what happens? What do people usually do in the material world? The moment they get little bit of success, they want to go write a book. Write a book on how to succeed. But very few people ever write a book saying how to fail. Because when we fail, it is always because of somebody else. It's always because of something else. But when we succeed, it always feels like it was me. And Krishna is pointing out the fallacy of this kind of a delusional mindset. All of this he is saying not to judge us, not to condemn us, but just to make sure we understand how to act without getting into the ego mindset. Because that is the right way to act, and that is going to help us evolve. So we begin by understanding, we begin by observing, and then when we act, we make sure that is not based on pride, that is not based on vanity or any of those dozens of ego-based things. And we reaffirm that the real doer is beyond me. I want to also quickly say that we spoke about para-prakriti, apara-prakriti. It is just lower nature and higher nature. But I want to say that Vedanta is never about condemnation. Vedanta will never say you are doomed, you are damned or anything like that. It is always empowering. Vedanta will say here is the knowledge, but you can use that knowledge to empower yourself and rise above. So this whole message of being what makes somebody a vimuda, what makes somebody delusional is for our knowledge, and so that we can rise above that. And we ourselves can make sure that we are not delusional. That is pretty much the promise of the Bhagavad Gita throughout. This is exactly where Krishna is going to take Arjuna now to the next sloka. The next sloka, 3.28, Krishna tells Arjuna, "O mighty armed Arjuna, the knower of truth understands that the soul is distinct from the gunas and the karmas. And those who know that the gunas in the shape of the senses, they are among the gunas." This is kind of gets a little technical. All he is saying is, Arjuna, try to understand this whole mechanism of Prakriti and how gunas work. And the objects are also part of Prakriti. The senses are also part of the Prakriti. Our tendencies to like something, dislike something, that is also part of Prakriti only. He's saying try to get a good understanding of all of that, and once you have that understanding, it is easy to not get attached to outcomes, because that outcome is also vastly influenced by the same Prakriti, and Prakriti is not in our control. We are under the control of Prakriti. I hope all this makes sense, logical sense. So in the previous verse, Krishna spoke about ahankara, vimudatma, and now in this verse he is giving the contrast. Now he is talking about tattva-vit. If somebody asks you what is the opposite of ahankara, vimudatma, the opposite of ahankara, vimudatma is a tattva-vit. Tattvam is the real nature. So Sankaracharya will beautifully say that tattva means the truth of anything, the real nature of anything. And he calls it tasya bhava tattvam. The truth about a thing is called tattvam. And tattva-vit is one who knows that truth. So if you know that you are not the doer because you understand the real nature of all of that is it is all by the gunas, then you become a tattva-vit. So simple, so profound, see? So what does such a person see? Guna karma vibhagayoho. He says he understands the relationship between guna and karma, between the forces of nature and how they influence your actions. And such a person understands and they can see that guna guneshu vartante. The gunas are moving among the gunas. Nature is interacting with nature. The field is moving within the field. It all seems a little technical. Later on we have a chapter dedicated to all of this called Kshetra Kshetragya Vibhaga Yoga. There Krishna will go very technical into all the field and Prakriti and all of that. So what does it mean? It pretty much means the gunas outside in the world of objects, circumstances, events, they're all shaped by gunas. They are interacting with the gunas inside us in the form of your body, your senses, your mind, your tendencies, your moods. And the gunas are playing outside and the gunas are playing inside. The senses are moving outside towards the objects Then the thoughts are arising, likes, dislikes come, the mind interprets that, the body responds. And this whole movement is what is called as guna guneshu vartante, where gunas are interacting with gunas. And we are supposed to understand this at a deeper level. All this understanding, see, if somebody just came and said, hey, drop that whole ego, is it easy? Can any of us do that? But this understanding, this knowledge strengthens and sharpens our intellect. And through the intellect, we can do that. We can introspect and detach ourselves from that ego. But if we don't, that is what makes every action create more bondage. It's all making sense. There is a lot to cover, so I'm going a little fast now, because we also have daylight savings and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. A beautiful thing, see, throughout Bhagavad Gita, I want you to pay attention to this, is you will see that Krishna will address Arjuna using many different names. And Arjuna is also addressing Krishna using many different names. No, and those choice of names are not random. It is not just, what I feel like. So even if you can look at the name used in a particular sloka, the context will become more clear. What Krishna is trying to explain. So for example, here Krishna is calling Arjuna as Mahabaho. Mahabaho is mighty armed. Because true might, what Krishna is trying to explain is, true might or true strength is not just external strength. The true strength is the strength to master your own inner world. The true strength is, how do you manage your own nature? And the true heroism is not defeating others. True heroism is, can you regulate your own mind? Can you overcome your own compulsions? Can you defeat your own vikaras? That is true heroism. And the tattva-vit is such a hero. So the term tattva-vit is given to a person who is able to be a true hero. A true hero is, he is able to actually internalize, introspect and conquer those things within them. If you see most of the saints, they will always say, I am not doing anything, it is all God's Ishwar Kripa. They will always come across very humbly. But does that mean that they have done nothing? I mean, they have not become a saint by doing nothing. No, they have done a tremendous amount of actions before they became a saint. But once they become a saint, that internalization, that jnana is there. They have become a tattva-vit. And they are telling us that it is not me, it's all, something higher than me. So 3.28 is not just a concept, it is just talking about the inner attitude of the wise person. So in practice, all that means is be more mindful and you will yourself, be able to catch it. Like when your Rajoguna is strong, that is when, you feel more restless. Does it happen to you? That sometimes you just feel restless and you don't know why, like, mera man vichalit hai, but why? That is pretty much, if you want to scientifically explain, that is just gunas. Your Rajo Guna is now dominant. That is, especially people who are very impatient. Like, they will sow a seed and the next day they have to see a plant. And so all of that is Rajo Guna. And if you are getting into such mindset, then you should just know that my Rajoguna is becoming dominant. And just like that, if you're always postponing things, if you're always procrastinating, if you're always avoiding rightful actions, then you should know that your Tamoguna is becoming predominant. See the language here? There is no condemnation. It doesn't say, oh, if you're always trying to procrastinate, you are a bad person. It says, if you're always procrastinating, that means your Tamoguna is now dominant. You have to understand that and figure out what might have caused it. Maybe you are eating tamasic food, maybe you are having some tamasic habits. Catch it, change it, your guna changes, and once your guna changes, your life experience automatically changes. That is the message here. So once you do all this, slowly you can feel the freedom within you. You can feel how you are now less in bondage. You will feel it. It is guaranteed. The law of the universe. That is when you will avoid, or you will get into a mindset where there will be less of comparisons and less of compulsions, less of confusions. There will be lesser and lesser disappointments, lesser and lesser sadness. See, we are not saying that nobody will disappoint you. We are saying you will not feel disappointed. These are two different things. One is not in your control, but the reaction is entirely in your control. For example, maybe you are, doing a lot of good to somebody near to you, dear to you. And rightfully, they are supposed to at least be thankful to you. But they may not even be thankful. So they will disappoint you. But are you going to feel disappointed? That is in your control. Are they going to disappoint you? Not in your control. So Krishna says, don't be attached to that. Don't try to control that. Don't say that if I am doing something good, then that person is also going to be thankful and grateful and do good back to me. That part Krishna says, don't be attached. And if you are able to do that, that means you are already feeling the freedom within you. That's a very powerful message. I don't know how to make it more impactful, but I'm telling you this. If nobody can insult you, if nobody can disappoint you, that is freedom. Real freedom is that. And Krishna is showing us how we can reach that stage. So that is the vision. That is Krishna's message. That is his compassionate message. I think with that I can stop my talking. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for patiently listening. I can open the floor. If you had any questions, comments, doubts.
No, when I told you that I did that act, Guruji, what's happening is we're going through a lot of stressful time currently in the Middle East, and this was one of the ways of it was a Marathi New Year, and it would have just gone by yet another day type. So then, just to bring in that good vibes, positive feelings, took that initiative, and at the end of it, I was very happy. It did that. Everybody was happy because trust me, we're going through some challenging times. This was one of the times where we just all sat, laughed, enjoyed, had a good time. That was the whole objective.
Yes. I totally understand. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. See, the message is when we say external circumstances we can't control, but internally we can control. But it works both ways. We all know that there was Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is supposed to be the worst. But are you telling me that there were no sad people, there were no stressed people in Satya Yuga or Treta Yuga? For example, you had Kaikeyi, who was really not in a good state of mind. Or if you go even more recent, Duryodhana or Shakuni. The world was relatively such a more prosperous place. The world was relatively so much better. But still, it doesn't mean that inherently everybody is just in a positive state of mind. So what we are trying to say is, we can choose to be miserable even when externally things are good, and vice versa. We can choose to be blissful even when externally things are chaotic. And that is the empowering message of the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita says, what you can control is within you. And that pretty much changes your experience of life. So I can see that everybody is probably thinking, they're introspecting, hopefully. And I hope all this is making sense. And gradually, I would love to see all of us evolving together and all of us feeling that inner freedom more and more. If nobody has any other questions, with that, maybe I can wrap up today's session. Yeah, the usual suspect. Ekans, there's a movie called The Usual Suspects.
No, Prabhuji.
Yeah, you whenever I see your hands, that movie comes to mind, Yes, Ekans, what's your question?
Prabhuji, you said taking baby steps moving forward. When you take baby steps, right? When instantly you can't see the results, but still there is always a question: am I progressing? Am I doing this? Am I going on a right path? Am I doing the right thing? how to change that am I?
See, your actual question is not am I. Your question is why am I not seeing results? See, that's you started with, so that is exactly what we said not to do. So don't worry about results. What you need to ask yourself is, am I doing what I'm supposed to do? Am I doing the right thing? That answer you will always have. But is it taking me in the right success? Is it giving me that is not none of your business. You have to have faith in the universe. You have to have faith in God that it will come. Whatever is supposed to come will come.
The basic question was, am I doing the right things? Because when you don't see the results, there is always a question, am I doing something? Something is there that I'm not doing in a right way. Might be.
What is the result? That's what I'm saying. Because why do you have an expectation that only if I see that result, that means what I did is justified? I'm saying that mindset is what you have to get away from. There are some people who will see results in an hour. There are some people who will see a result in a lifetime. Some people take many lifetimes to see results. That's not in our control, because we discussed you have kriyamana karma, prarabdha karma, sanchita karma. There are like millions of parameters in action here. So the results don't tell you whether you are on the right path. That is a wrong assessment. You just have to know you are on the right path. And if you definitely want some indication, this is the indication I tell my students of my Bhakti Sutra class is, what is your ultimate goal?
Reach God. Realize God.
What is that state known as? You remember? That state is known as Satchidanand. That means once you reach God, you reach the state of Satchidananda, which means supreme bliss. So, is it logical to say that before I reach supreme bliss, if I'm halfway there, I will be half as blissful? If I'm 1/4 the way there, I'm 1/4. In other words, are you more blissful today than you were yesterday? If you are, then you are doing something right. But if you feel miserable inside, if you're not feeling peaceful, if you're not feeling happy, that means there is something that you have to do differently. That should be the only measure, I would say. Am I more blissful today than I was last week? Am I more peaceful, blissful? That should be the only indication, the true indication of success.
I got math.
Okay.
That was.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But thanks for asking these questions, Ekanshi. I appreciate that. Smitaji, you wanted to say something? You unmuted.
Me, the Smita?
Nothing. No, nothing. Go ahead, please.
I am also Smita and I want to ask something. Or rather,
Okay, what a coincidence, yeah.
No, maybe he meant you, but I seriously want to say something. Supposing if you come in contact with a learned person and his discourse, you're listening to his jnana, I was wondering if it is ahankara that would not let you choose him, or not give him the pedestal and say that he's a Guruji, or it is just that you're reading a lot of things, so you don't know whether everything is Guru. I mean, I'm confused.
Okay. There is no formula here, Smitaji, because definitely we are living in a Yuga where there are a lot of people who can mislead us.
May I speak in between and say something else as well?
Yes.
The example of Buddha and his cousin. Sometimes this also is holding back, You just look at the Buddha as a cousin. If I am his cousin and I'm looking at the Buddha, maybe the mind, the childhood programming or whatever, it just goes on thinking that yes, is the cousin. Though you may understand that he is really, really good, great. So is that something wrong?
Yeah.
How it is a natural progress, isn't it? How can you just think that, well, he is the great one? I mean, maybe I'm goofing it up, but that's what I feel.
No, there are no wrong questions. See, there is only, I'll try to explain it slightly differently. There is only one absolute truth. We all agree and acknowledge that. Only one absolute truth. All other truths are relative truths. or I would call them as situational truths. So you have a daughter. Well, let us assume that you are also the teacher in the school that your daughter attends. Now, when you are teaching in the classroom, would you appreciate if your daughter kept saying, "Mama, I have a question, Mama, I have a problem"? No, because the situational truth there is you are a teacher, she is a student. You come home, then you are a mother, she is a daughter. You being a mother is also the truth, you being the teacher is also the truth. Just like that, Buddha being his cousin is also the truth. But when Buddha is imparting spiritual knowledge, then he is a guru. That is a situational truth. And what prevents somebody from acknowledging that? If you tell your daughter, hey, in the classroom, I am a teacher, what will prevent your daughter from accepting it? That will be her ego. That is all Krishna is saying. He's saying it's your ego.
I think more than accepting, I think it's taking for granted. Like, oh, I know this person so well. Like unconscious bias, taking them for granted. Is that something that can also happen? Like Gar ki murgi dal barabar. Like, okay, we keep seeing them and something like that. Taking for granted. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, in other words, all of these are ego-based is what I'm saying, is because, this is just my buddy. That's an ego-based assessment. Ego is not always a negative thing. Ego is a very practical problem we all have. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, initially, Arjuna used to address Krishna only as a friend, Sakha. And if you look at the Bhagavad Gita at the beginning, as long as Arjuna kept calling Krishna and treating Krishna as a friend, Krishna had no problem being Arjuna's friend. In fact, Krishna himself has called Arjuna as his dear friend. There is no problem there. They are friends, definitely. But as long as Arjuna could only see a friend in Krishna, there was only a debate. There came a moment where Arjuna said, "Oh Krishna, I surrender. Now I think I realize that it is beyond me. You are now the teacher. As a teacher, explain me. I am now surrendering to you. You are now my guru." That is when the actual Bhagavad Gita starts. So what I'm trying to tell you is, there are many questions in your question. First of all, you need to be sure that whoever you are trying to accept is capable, is the right person. Because in today's Kali Yuga, a lot of people can mislead you also. So that is also something Krishna has explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna said, the external appearances are not what are important. So don't look for external dogmas, external appearances. The person doesn't have to look charming with long hair, with a tilak, and it's not important, because that is what people run behind. The person can look very ordinary. Like Shirdi Sai Baba is a great example. Shirdi Sai Baba, there was no adambar. He used to look like a beggar. And that is one of the reasons why a lot of people couldn't accept him initially. But he was the real gem. There you have to use your intellect to first make that assessment whether you are running behind a sense-based something or whether you are following somebody based on the matter that they have. But once that decision is made, then get your ego under control. That is the whole lesson. Okay, I hope this makes sense, and we can continue the discussion even offline if you have further questions. We are on the path. The same holds to God. Why Guru is okay, but we have the same problem with God. I need evidence. So many people are like, God has to prove himself first. Then I will believe in God. And then we have to tell, the term is leap of faith is the term. And there is a reason why leap comes first. You have to first leap, then the net will appear. You can't say, first let me see the net, then I will leap. You see? So there are so many things involved here. But the simple lesson is, don't get into ego mode. Don't get into a sense of doership. Just be sure that you are doing what you are supposed to do. Do your duties without attachment and realize that it is helping not just you, but also helping
everybody that you are attached to. So that is pretty much the summary of what we learned. I hope this all makes sense.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you everybody. Hare Krishna. Stay in touch. Wish you a beautiful day and week.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you, Guruji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.